Welcome, everybody. I got an exciting show for you guys. Today, we have an awesome guest, Justin Jacobson. He is an esports and entertainment attorney, which is a super cool job title. We're going to talk to them about that. He's actually a vice president of a law firm. We're going to get into some of that stuff. He's negotiated multi-million-dollar deals in entertainment and in the esports space. So we're going to get into some of that cool stuff. He's written a bunch of articles. He's done a bunch of different kinds of shows. We're going to get into all the cool and exciting stuff he's done. And I really want to find out how he got to this point, why he's interested in all this stuff, and all the fun things that go into being an attorney and esports. Two things that I think are pretty cool topics. So welcome, Justin.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
No, it's exciting. It's an exciting time, and I'm glad we were able to connect and do this today. So, I want to start out. I want to go back a little bit, about 10 to 15 years ago to when you first got started, because I want to know the history of how you got to the point of where you are today. So you started out. You went to GW. You were an undergrad in sociology. So what was your undergrad experience like? Like, why did you have some kind of plan as an undergrad, or why sociology? What was going on at this time?
I mean, GW was awesome. Washington, D.C. is just an amazing place to go. And, I always kind of knew I was interested in the law in some capacity and, kind of grew up in the entertainment world. So, it was just kind of an amazing opportunity living in New York, growing up in Long Island, about a half hour from New York City. So it's like, I really felt that like another kind of city campus, GW was amazing. And sociology was just, once I kind of knew I was going to law school, I felt like, everyone was a criminal justice major or
Sure.
criminology major. I'm like, okay, well, sociology is, a different angle. And some of the classes were like more theoretical and really understanding, some of the psychology and the reasons why people do things, learned about cathedrals of consumption and the McDonaldization of America and, some of these very elaborate contemporary sociological theories that I think really kind of influence me now and how I kind of approach what I do and how I kind of deal with the sociology and kind of these interactions, the social interactions with other people.
Oh, definitely. That's awesome. I was a political science major because my goal when I first started college was also to go into law. And then by my senior year, I took the LSATs, but I had completely transitioned into tech. So my career trajectory switched to me getting a master's in instructional technology versus going into law. So what was it about law that you knew that this was a thing for you?
Well, I kind of, always grew up in like a family of, attorneys. My father's an attorney. So it's always around me, but I was much more involved in like the entertainment and music side. And initially during college and through law school, I was more involved in putting on events and event production and working nightlife and DJs and kind of managing that aspect. And then
Gotcha.
I kind of went to law school because it was just kind of, a really unique asset to have. And I was able to really focus on the kind of law that would be useful no matter what, if I was a practicing attorney or was just involved in, some business world in some capacity, whether it's, was at a label or a management company or, just any kind of business venture that needed someone that had like a really good grasp of, intellectual property and contracts, business laws and LLCs and, kind of this more corporate business legal information. So it really was just a unique asset and knowledge to have. And to me, it just kind of was natural. I don't know. It was like I always kind of like equated to that scene in The Matrix, like the last scene when he just like sees the Matrix for what it is and just like stops it. Like that's just kind of how it was for me. And, I felt like it was just a unique education to have. And, it always kind of like differentiates me when I'm in conversations with other people with, having this different knowledge and looking at situations from maybe a different perspective or, with even a different experience.
Now you said that this has been a family thing. Your father's an attorney. Now you've been working for his firm. You've been doing tons of stuff, which we're going to get to. So how's that? Do you enjoy? Is that like a good thing? Like, do you think working with your family, has that been a good thing? I'm sure there are good and bad things about every job. So
Yeah, I mean,
how's that
it's
experience?
it's definitely has the good and the bad, and it's definitely it's nice that he kind of understands like what I'm trying to do and, probably a little bit more in touch with what's going on, like the youth culture than maybe some more, attorneys of his age. And, he's obviously seen me with the video games my whole life. So I guess he kind of really understands that, like, yeah, me and my friends would hang out and play video games or be in our basement playing StarCraft, like on our computers. Like, this is like something that is kind of not that foreign to him. So once we started working in that a bit more, it wasn't like a complete shock as it might have been to some other, bigger firms
So
that
has he
really
been like a
weren't.
big mentor for you as you've been doing all this?
Yeah, he's definitely, kind of brings in a unique perspective and experience to everything, and someone to bounce ideas and concepts
Hmm.
on, and
Cool.
where it's good. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I have I'm a professor. My father's a professor, so and it wasn't like it was totally not planned for me to follow in his footsteps. But yeah, having that, being able to be mentored there, definitely like has helped me along the way make big decisions and stuff like that. So I definitely know what you're talking about, especially with all the advantages and disadvantages doing the same thing, family type thing, and how it all works out. Definitely cool. So let's go back to you. So you talked a little bit about your undergrad. You decide to go into law. What's law school like? Is it like I picture law school as you are studying 24/7? I mean, is it a really difficult thing? Is law school hard?
I mean, it's definitely like a grind. It's really about, time management. I would say that, it's probably between classes and, be on law review and just then you got to get internships and all these things. It's like a full time thing where you're reading, thousands of pages, if not 1,000 pages per each class. But again, I think that it has its purpose. But, then it's one of these questions where everyone's like, oh, the academia and, some of these schools, it gives you like an information set, a guide on how you could do things and knowledge to have. And I think it's really all about having to take what you know and apply it and kind of understand it and
Sure.
know that, yeah, like this is good for here, but there's so many other things going on that like whatever you're learning here isn't going to be the exact situation you're going to be dealing with most of the time. So it's teaching you kind of just how to approach things. I think is like the biggest thing from it is just like kind of seeing like every side, not just two sides of, but like 20 different sides and 20 different outcomes. And, thinking that, yeah, everything is rosy and red right now. But, if things don't go as you plan or shipment comes late or, COVID happens out of nowhere and, everyone's best laid plans go to waste, so it kind of teaches you how to be a little bit more able to go with the flow. I think, I think that it's, but yeah, it's definitely a grind. And, the LSTAT and then studying for the bar is just, one of those things where you just do it as hard as you can once so you don't have to do it again.
Sure. Absolutely.
Like that was the way I looked at it. It was like, I'm going to go hard, like, wake up, study till lunch, study till dinner, study till sleep. And that's kind of like the mentality you have to do.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's when I was working on my doctorate, it was very similar. There was just this grind for like a solid 4 years, and it just felt like it was. I questioned like, why am I doing this? A
Oh my
hundred, like,
God.
is it worth it? Is it going to be worth it? Am I going to finish this thing? Just kind of funny how that all works out. Okay, so you're currently vice president of your law firm, of the law firm that you work for. What does that mean? What's the difference between vice president and an attorney?
I mean, realistically, it's really kind of the same thing. I would say that it's just more of, entitled, being able to be more of an officer of the entity, being able to, bind it and operate more on behalf of it. But, realistically, it's still the same day to day grind, finding clients, working on the existing ones, writing articles, doing, speaking engagements, and just really kind of putting yourself out there in some capacity and building the firm. That's kind of my goal almost every day is to do something, whether it's doing work or, engaging with, individuals like yourself or with, different writers or publications, speaking on a panel at the end of the month and one the following month. So it's really trying to kind of put what I'm doing and what we're working on here kind of in the limelight and in front of the right people.
And so, what was that climb like? Like, you started out there as a legal assistant, then you moved to attorney, now you're up at the VP level. What's that climb like? Is there like different types of work you do at each of those levels?
Well, yeah, starting out, it was very much just like most of the day to day stuff, just kind of working on existing clients, really kind of familiarizing myself with what the contracts look like, how you engage with, talent and creative people. Because, as you learn in esports and gaming spaces, these more creative worlds, whether it's music or art or fashion, like there's just a special way you have to explain things to the clients and how you have to engage with them. Like, it takes a certain touch to be able to tell something that they may not want to hear with a way that they're like, okay, well, I get it, or like, really explain, a 30-page contract to them in a way that maybe, a rapper or, an actress or a model might not understand it the same way, a professor or,
Sure,
a dentist or, and again, yeah, exactly.
I
So
run
it's
into the
like,
same thing with research. I got to explain it to people in layman's terms. They don't know all my terminology.
yeah, so I think that that's one of the things, especially in, the talent-driven world where like, you're not representing, doctors and, other lawyers and accountants and, more finance people who maybe are a bit more sophisticated in their dealings. You might be dealing with some random rapper who just got a 30-page contract from a manager and it's like, here, sign this. It's like, okay, well, let's like kind of back up and see,
Sure.
what's going on with here and here. And, you understand what this means. And, because at the end of the day, it's your job to explain it to the client so that they're comfortable with it. And I think that, part of the process working my way up was learning this, learning how to engage with them, learning how to then engage with, the person you're negotiating with, like the outward facing client, the person that, there's certain things you can ask for, certain things you can't ask for, certain ways you ask for things, like you can phrase something where it's like, this is what we're comfortable with, or like, we don't feel that we need to do anything else, like there are ways to say no without saying no and like being tactful with it. So I think that's just something that you kind of learn experience and as you're kind of like moving up the ladder and getting more responsibility.
Is it a lot of work hours? Is it a long hours, long weeks, or does it just kind of vary?
I mean, yeah, it's just, I would say that we're definitely not on the, some 7 to 12 kind of grind that some of the big law firms are. We're definitely, I believe that there's a lot of value in, especially, months ago, being out, going to events, especially being in New York, there's a lot of networking opportunities, whether it's just, networking groups or, record release parties or launch parties or, even events that we throw. We're very involved in hosting industry networking events to kind of get our clients together and then some of our other colleagues and try to hopefully kind of make like almost like a business card swapping soiree where it's like, oh, you're a rapper, you're a producer, hey, you guys should talk. Or, you're like, you're a videographer. Okay, these guys are looking to make a music video, and I feel like a lot of my best clients and a lot of my best leads have been just kind of out at events, whether it's fashion weeks or just, a magazine release party in a random club or, some of these more, industry driven things that we used to be able to go to.
Sure. So where does gaming fit into this? So, we're talking about a vice president of a law firm. We're talking about law school, and now we're talking about video games. So, have video games been a part of your life, like your whole life? Is that how this started?
Yeah, I mean, my earliest memory is of Nintendo, like holding the gun up against the TV screen to make sure I got that duck. Like,
yeah,
I don't know, the 7-year-old, like the 7-year-old in me thought that was how I wouldn't miss it, I guess.
Yes.
And then, to Sega, the N64, now I have PlayStation and Xbox, and, I kind of play, NBA 2K almost, every day, and sometimes more than I care to admit on the weekends. And,
Sure.
as I mentioned, I was a big StarCraft and StarCraft 2 guy. So that was definitely, a big part of my life. And, a lot of memories are just, playing Madden or FIFA or 2K or, with coming over, like let's order pizza and like playing Madden, and
Sure.
it's just like a lot of my social engagements were around gaming and video games. In college, I definitely lost more, 30 racks to Madden games than I want to admit, but, it adds a little incitement. Maybe broke a PlayStation controller or two that I, didn't mean to do.
Sure.
These things, sometimes they just slip. What are you going to do, right?
Yeah, it happens.
It happens, right? When Michael Vick just runs all over you. There's nothing you can do about it. So, video games, and gaming has always been kind of, a portion of my life in some capacity. And, about 5 years ago, I was, really kind of just flipping through the channels and I kind of caught wind of, E-League on TBS and, saw, kids playing Street Fighter for $250,000.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what? like $250,000, like the game that like used to play at like the arcade for 25 cents.
Yes.
Like I remember like mashing buttons at that game. Blanca with his like, electric thing. It's just like these kids are getting $250,000 to play like this. So it really kind of opened my eyes to what it had really become. And I spent some time kind of exploring the industry, especially from, the more professional, legal side that I came from. And most of the people that were already kind of in the space seemed to me to be more like traditionally born and bred esports and gaming people. Like, they were just like, they were big gamers and they became lawyers, so they started to represent their friends. Or, they were already like a former gamer who went to law school. And, I saw that I was unique coming from this more entertainment, music, sports, mainstream fashion world, that I, had maybe a different experience, a different kind of approach to, talent representation and development, and, working with, Universals and Warners and Sonys and all of these, Viacoms, these big entertainment conglomerates. You really kind of understand how you deal with these companies, how you negotiate these, as you mentioned, these 5 and 6 figure deals, these, record deals, these publishing deals and things with these kind of big companies that have been doing these things for, 30, 40, 50 years, if not, longer than that. So I thought that it was, I kind of brought a unique perspective and network and connections. And through that, I was able to really just start working with a few talent agents in the space to really kind of just develop my knowledge and expertise of, engaging with the players, learning what the contracts look like, learning how to talk to the different teams. And from there, I started to kind of develop my own book of talent and teams that I was working with. And, from there, I've just kind of continued on that route, representing professional gamers and streamers and coaches and, casters and different brands in the space, and, helping them with all their legal stuff. So, contracts, copyrights, trademarks, the visa stuff, all this.
That's it. Like, why do these players need? I mean, I know a couple semi-pro players, and the last thing on any of I've never even heard a mention of a lawyer. So where does this come in? Like, why do they need an attorney?
I mean, I think that, and what I noticed was that similar to, the music world and sports and, movies and TV and, these more other entertainment driven worlds, there is this established professional world around it. There are agents and managers and attorneys and financial advisors and, CPAs and accountants and these people that just really specialize in these more entertainment driven worlds, because there is a specific knowledge, there is an understanding of, the mechanics and the professional side and the business and legal side. And yeah, when you're making $1,000 a month on like a little deal, that's one thing. But, when you're making 6 figures, or, some of these guys on these Forbes lists making, 10, 20, $30 million a year, like, you're going to be starting to deal with much bigger companies with, much higher priced lawyers and, signing these agreements that at the end of the day, they're meant to protect their client, which really isn't you. And I think that's one thing that a lot of, talent in the gamers really are maybe a little naive, maybe it's just inexperienced or just unsophisticated, but it's like, the team's attorney didn't make the agreement to protect you. Like, they made it to protect them. And, they know that there could be a little give and take in it. They probably know they made it a little bit more aggressive than it might need to be. And, you need to have someone that understands, okay, well, this is a little crazy, or like we could get this a little bit more balanced, or at least to explain it to you so you really understand it. Because the last thing you want is, you wake up 3 months from now, 6 months, a year, whatever the time frame is, you're like, oh wow, like I can't believe I signed this, or I didn't realize that that's what that meant. And it's like, at that point, it's really too late. Unless someone held like a gun to your head, like it's gonna be enforceable, and it's. Then you kind of get to situations where, might have TIFU, where you have to go the litigation route. And, unless you're making millions of dollars like him, most people aren't going to be in the situation for that to ever be like really an option. Like, you can't spend $10,000 to make $2,000. Like it, the economics. So it's like, it really kind of puts you in a position of like, you have to be aware of what you sign, because it's going to be enforceable. And, now that you have the potential to become like, a multimillionaire overnight, like Booga, like, you win a tournament that, puts you in a whole new light, and now you're in a different price bracket. And now, millions of people know your name, and, you have, 50,000 more fans overnight, and you just kind of explode. And, maybe the contract you signed a year ago probably doesn't fit what your current state of affairs are. But unless you kind of maybe built in, okay, well, if I get, 50,000 more followers over this month span, then you have to pay me X more. Or if, I
Sure.
make this much prize money, then I get a bigger cut of it. Or, like you as a professional would understand the way the industry works and can kind of build in some of these things. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the most recent example I use, sorry, I feel bad for him, is, Clayster. Like, he went from winning the Call of Duty Pro League one night to being dropped the next morning. And like, he had a contract that probably was, a 2-year deal, 6 figures plus. Like, yeah, like you're thinking that like you're set. I'm gonna get like nearly $500,000 to play, Call of Duty for the next 2 years. This
Yeah.
is great. And you wake up and it's like, oh well, we didn't exercise your option, so here's your goodbye tweet. And it's like you sometimes forget that this is the business that like, you always see these Hard Knocks, on HBO, where it's like you see the guys getting cut, and it's always like, yeah, this is the business. Like this is what it is. And in esports, I feel like we don't see it as much. It's not, you don't just see someone go from like the top to like the free agency pool that quick. But I think that as the stakes keep growing and as everything evolves, it's going to be more the norm than the not.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it with like, I think one of the biggest examples that the media sees right now is with what's happening with Ninja, moving from Twitch to Mixer, back to Twitch, now getting new news this week about something else. Like, just because he's, one of the top guys, so people are hearing about it. But yeah, it's crazy. I don't think a lot of the up, and it's also kids, like are 14-year-olds.
Yeah, I've been talking to a 13-year-old. Like I was connected with someone who like FaZe has like a 13-year-old, and it's like talk with him and his dad, and because he has such upside, FaZe wants to like go to court with the agreement to make sure it's enforceable. These things you do with like child actors, so
Yeah,
that
it's exactly like that. They're a kid. They're not 13-year-old kid is not thinking about an attorney and a contract.
yeah, he's not thinking about 2 years from now when he's 15, 16, 17. Like, but like realistically, he has to,
Yeah.
because all you need is one thing, two things that fall in line, and you get 10 million. Like you kind of level up, and the numbers get higher, and you have a lot more to gain or lose based on how you structured things.
Yeah, and I saw you post an article the other day on LinkedIn. Not that I'm stalking you on LinkedIn, but I did
Well, I
notice you.
appreciate it.
Whenever I'm doing an interview with someone, I like try to read everything about them. But I saw you post a really interesting article about protecting your gamer tag. Something that I've honestly like, because I've never thought about it. I've had the same. Not that I'm a professional esports player, but I'm now a professor of esports, and I have a gamer tag that's known at my university. And every game, and I was like, wow, I've never thought of that. Is that like Kid Rock protecting his name, Kid Rock?
Exactly. That's like the exact way I equate it. The same way Tim the Tatman or Nick Merckx or Ninja has a value in their name. The same way Madonna or Blink 182 or Metallica. Like there's this inherent value that a trademark protects, that other people can't use your name. You can't just, I can't just start selling Ninja T-shirts.
Sure.
Like because he has, I can't. Same thing with like the Yankees or some of these teams. So
Mickey
it's
Mouse shirt or whatever.
exactly. So it's similar. And now again, as the numbers rose, and now your name, Tim, Dr. Disrespect, your name is worth millions of dollars. You're licensing it to G Fuel for a line. You're licensing it to Scuff Gaming. You're letting these major brands use your name. But if you don't have a trademark securing rights to your name, like what are you really giving them? So it, as the stakes and ultimately the money went up, these protections that, like I said, come from the more traditional entertainment and sports world. Like, Michael Jordan has his name registered,
Sure.
and Magic Johnson, and, Lynn Sanity, and, some of these, the Brow, I know. So a lot of these athletes kind of have their nicknames, as well as their, real legal names protected, so that they kind of establish these rights in them and can really like monetize and monitor how other people are using it.
Yeah, I had never even really. I mean, I understand why like a guy like Ninja would do it, but I didn't understand that like, oh yeah, you know what, your gamer tag is like is becoming an identity. Like even on Discord, like people get to know you, and that's like you. And especially I have some students that are semi-pro, potentially making it to that next level. And how do I tell them to protect themselves? So they would get like a trademark for their name, I assume is. And they probably need an attorney to help them through some of those steps, correct? It's not simple to fill out all those forms. norms, right? It's not.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, being an attorney that does that, it's a little biased. But yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, if you're not sure of something, the worst case, and we have this all the time where they come like, oh, I tried to file it and, I did it on my own. I did it with LegalZoom. And it's like, oh, well, you completely messed it up. So it's like, we have
Yeah.
to redo it from the beginning. And it's like, okay, well, you just spent that money on LegalZoom for no reason because you have to then spend it
Nah, you
to
got
do
to
it
do it
over.
anyway. Yeah.
And again, it's kind of like the short sided thing where it's like, yeah, what, spending like $1,000, a month's salary, whatever, to have someone review the contract, while it maybe might not immediately show the value today, tomorrow, or a month later, I'm, willing to bet more times than not, someone like myself or, any other professional will well earn their money. They will have, done something, whether it's, editing the contract to maybe make it more fair, include some incentives, or, even just really making sure you fully understand what you're doing so it's done properly and so you're confident in what you're doing. So, while it may just seem preaching to the choir, I definitely, believe that, a professional in the space definitely can provide, added value and really kind of make sure that you feel confident, because that's the worst thing is, you get a 23rd page agreement and you really don't understand what it means.
Sure.
You don't understand how it's going to impact you, years down the line. And, I've had kids come in with me like, and I read the contract. I'm like, you signed this? And he's like, it says that? I'm like, yeah, it says that. Like, like they own all your work and like they own your name, like all these things. It's like, well, at least you should know, like, at least be aware of these things, even if we can't try to change them.
So is that what you do? Like if someone comes to you with a contract, like that's what negotiating the contract. Like I came, let's say I had like a, 2-year $1 million contract. I come to you and you say, you know what, you probably don't want to, or here's what this means. Do you want to do that? And then we go back to the company. Is that how this process works?
Yeah, so it's like, a review and negotiation process where, we may get the draft and then we kind of give, some red line revisions and suggestions on things that, maybe might make more sense. Like, okay, well, this clause, maybe we can make it, this, instead of 60 days, 30 days when they pay you, or, try to just kind of go through it and see what things we can do that might be a little bit more advantageous or, a little bit more balanced and towards the middle, as well as kind of explaining to you what everything means and what the different options are. And it's like, okay, well, this is a reasonable request, but they might say no because of this, and really kind of explaining what both sides of, the arguments are, where it's like, okay, well, they're probably saying this because of X, Y, and Z. But I think that because of this, we should be able to get this, and really kind of
Gotcha.
explaining some of the thinking behind, what you're trying to accomplish with the agreement, and ultimately trying to make sure that they're comfortable with it, that it's something that they're like, okay, well, maybe it's not exactly what I want, but at least like, I'm okay with it. I'm comfortable. And, because nobody wants to do a deal they feel taken advantage of. Like, that's just not a way to start a relationship. It's probably not going to be a good relationship when all said and done. And, you're always going to feel like, oh, I feel like I'm being taken advantage of, or he's not paying me enough, or, and let's be real. Like, when you're not that enthused about something, it shows.
Yeah.
Like, I can tell how, how enthused you are about the podcast and just the energy that you're bringing to it. So it's like, it makes me enthused about it. It makes me want to, engage more. So I think that, as an employee, especially in these talent-driven worlds, you want them to be excited about it. You don't want them to just finally sign on your team and it be like, oh, that was like pulling teeth,
Sure.
like what's going to be next? You want to be like, oh, this was such a great process. They're so supportive of me. I can't wait to, accomplish X, Y, and Z, all the things that they wanted to do. So it's like, to me, that's the conversation that you want.
Now,
That's what you're,
go ahead.
like, that's what you want your client to like come away feeling. That like, okay, yeah, like they believe in me. They want to work with me. Like, they see the value that I can bring. Because I think that they're going to then work harder for them. You're going to, really be more thoughtful and, aware in what you do on their behalf.
Now, do you go out and seek the players, or do they come to you? Like, what's the common thing that happens in the industry? Like, is that?
I mean, it's kind of like a combination of both. I would say that, there's definitely certain talent that maybe, I may, seek out to, engage with and talk. But I would say most of it is, people seeking me out or, referrals from other clients. Like, that's probably like the primary way. And, most of my best clients have come from, there's another client being like, oh, you should talk to my guy, Justin. Like, he does great by me. And, usually those are the people that end up staying around the longest. And, they kind of have certain expectations and they're just, like, okay, like he's doing good for him. So, chances are he'll probably do good for me. So I would say that it's, really a combination of both, but most of the time it's, a referral kind of thing.
And how does like being charged in, or how does like the contract person pay you? Is there like, and I don't mean you personally, but like just in industry in general, is this by flat fees, or do they pay percentage of contracts, or is it just completely variable depending on what is going on?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would say that, most people are all different, but like, us in particular, we kind of are workable where it's like just a flat fee for a certain project, or, an hourly retainer where it's just kind of based on the amount of time spent on something, or, depending on, those are like, I'd say the usually two most common ones, because it's just kind of an easiest way to operate that way. It's like, okay, well, this is the cost. I kind of know what it's going to be. I can budget out for it. It, makes it a bit easier to, plan my expenditures. And sometimes it's like, okay, well, if it's just based on the time spent, then that like, okay, if it's going to be like, hours and hours of work, you at least know like what it's accounted for. And it's, you feel everyone does, again, you don't want anyone to feel taken advantage of. I think that's like the biggest thing that I like to approach business is, that they feel like, okay, well, look at how much time you put into it. It makes sense that it cost X.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So now you're doing all kinds of other stuff besides just being an attorney. You're here today and you are hosting podcasts, you are interviewing people, you are doing a bunch of podcasts. So what is this like? Why are you doing this? Is this like you just love that part of media? Is that what this is? Is that why you're doing it?
I mean, I think I really enjoy it. I definitely enjoy talking. I guess that's one of the traits of being an attorney is you like to talk. And, it's always fun to talk about myself and, talk about things that I enjoy.
Sure.
And, kind of on the hosting front, I feel like I kind of try to bring a different perspective on things with just kind of my knowledge of the industry and kind of, the legal and business world where, I'm trying to give a different perspective than maybe some other people that are hosting podcasts that maybe are a bit more knowledgeable about, the gameplay mechanics and strategies. And, maybe they can give you a better review on, the gameplay of a certain game. But when you look at, understanding how different parties, whether it's a brand or a team or a player or, an analytics company in the space, how they operate, how they make money and, where they fit in, I think is, another important thing to learn. And, that's just something that I guess I'm good at. And I think it really is important because it kind of puts me out there and lets me kind of engage with people and, have content that's like, hey, like this is me talking about this topic. Or, if you want to learn a little bit more about what's going on, check this article out. Because I think especially nowadays, there's just so much stuff. There's so much white noise. There's so many blogs and emails and social media platforms that, you really have to do whatever you can to like put yourself out there and distinguish yourself. And, original content, I think, is, one of the things that distinguishes yourself, as with, this great interview series that you have.
No, I get it 100%. I love the media. Like it's a hobby that I've combined in the work, and I love doing. It's like, I don't feel like I'm working. It is work, but I'm doing it because I like it. I really, if you didn't, getting on a show and putting yourself out there on voice or video is not an easy thing to do. It takes some guts. You got to be able to just kind of do it. And you're a professional. You've got a lot of cool knowledge to provide about, esports is a super huge, important and, popular topic, but the law aspect is such a unique niche to come at it. You're not talking about like, oh, League of Legends, I'm a really good jungler. There's a million really good junglers out there, and I see a million podcasts about how to jungle, but I don't see a lot of podcasts about being an esports lawyer. You know, it's a really cool niche, and it's an important topic that needs to be talked about more. That I wasn't as aware of it even like a year or two ago as I am today. Just how much more aware of how important it really is.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say there's a lot more esports, attorneys popping up every day now. I get more DMs from people like, "Oh, how do I get into this?" Than, you know, but I think that ultimately the biggest thing is kind of the actual experience in it, and that's kind of like my
Hmm.
advice to anyone that's talking to any of these people is like, what are they actually doing? What have they actually done? And who are they doing it with? Like, you can always tell who actually has experience and who is just kind of putting something up on Twitter that they do
Yeah,
it.
yeah. No, no, it's the same. And this field, I feel like esports, it's really easy. You can tell pretty quick if someone's a true fan of the games, if they really know what they're talking about, or they're just like, hey, I'm here for some money. Like, I want to figure out how to capitalize on this thing. No, that does not work in this industry. It is not the industry for that.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that that's important though. I think that that's why it's so successful and what makes it, have such great staying power and such brand appeal. And, like, I don't know if we kind of mentioned this, but, more recently I've been, appointed the manager of, Ford Models talent division, the esports and gaming division. So, when they kind of approach me being, they're a more traditional high end, luxury and modeling agency, they already had this digital influencer division more on wellness and beauty
Hmm.
influencers, and but they really also saw a lot of the intersection. They some of the brands they were working with asking about gaming and esports. They're hearing about Ninja, and
Hmm.
seeing what Louis Vuitton and Gucci and
Sure.
some of the Mercedes and Audi and some of these more luxury
Hmm.
brands are starting to do in the space. And I think that that's an important thing, is to be able to understand that, okay, this is evolving more and more mainstream, and that's what is so great about it. And that's why the fans are so engaged with it, and you know they're very loyal to their product. Like, you can get a pretty good ROI on a good product from gamers.
Hmm.
If it's a terrible product, they're gonna let you know too. But if it's something that's like, oh wow, this is great, the community is gonna embrace it, and it's gonna do very well.
So how do you find the time to do all this stuff? Is it just like that because it's your passion? It doesn't feel like work. I mean, it seems
I
like
mean,
you're.
you just have to just keep doing it. As you were alluding to earlier with the podcast stuff, it's like you just got to do it and just, make lists. There's a lot of lists lying around everywhere of what to do, and, prioritize what has to get done today and in the next hour versus, what you can do a little later or
Sure.
tomorrow. And, luckily there's a lot of synergy between everything that I'm doing. So it's kind of like, okay, like an hour ago I was talking to a client about esports. Now this hour I'm talking to you about it. In 2 hours I'm gonna talk to an agency about
Sure.
it, and tomorrow morning I'll talk to a client about their deal. So it's like, a lot of the similar topic, just different conversations.
So what? So based on the extra stuff you're writing articles. You're publishing articles. You're hosting a podcast. You're being interviewed. What's your meat? Like my choice. I published. I wrote a book. I published. I love video. Video is my thing. It's what I like. So what's your like? What do you like? What's your meat? I'm just curious about. I
I
love
mean,
talking tech with
I
people.
guess I think I really enjoy writing. I think
Yeah.
that, the podcast would probably be the second. The video, it's a little bit more restricting. Got to worry about where my hands are, and, what my hair looks like, got to make sure that everything looks outwardly, in that realm. But, really talking or writing is just, much more natural to me. And, I think that sometimes it's a little bit easier to maybe express yourself in the written word, where like you can stop and think and edit, and
Yes.
you
It's
know
definitely harder
yeah,
in video to do
thank
that.
you for the deletion key, like.
Yes. Yeah, no, I totally get that. I always look at this stuff as an art form, and I'm just always curious to hear from other creators about what they prefer and why. And I think it's just me appreciating the art to ask that kind of question. So I think that's kind of
Yeah, I mean, I
cool.
think that the visual element obviously adds, like another layer to it. And I would say, like, if you're a creator out there, the VOD and the video element is very valuable for, viewership in general. I think that, more people like watching video now than they maybe did, years ago. And
Oh
whereas
yeah.
much more podcast audio focused. So, anyone that asked me that question, I would say that you probably got to have the video. But, my podcast kind of in COVID shifted from, a video interview to just an audio one because, first nobody had haircuts, and then, people worrying about internet, and, my internet and setup isn't as, as ideal as it was, in the office. So it was just a lot easier just to kind of just focus on the audio, and ultimately we're really not like doing anything on screen other than just us.
Yeah.
So like, the video element adds a nice like relatability to it, but I don't think that the content is really
changed.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I agree. It adds it's makes it significantly more complicated. If you saw how many lights I have set up and equipment
Right.
I've invested, like it's definitely a lot more complicated. I agree. For some reason I love that complication. I don't know why.
Well, no, I mean, when you have your perfect setup in your place, it's great.
Yeah,
I'm sitting here on my kitchen table, so it's like, I'm sitting here with all the wires plugged into the wall, right across the living room. So it's like, not as easy as my office.
Yeah, I've got green screen behind me. This is
I know.
my
At first I was like, oh, those are cool old computers. Then I realized, okay, it's a green screen.
Yes, and what's funny is my real office at work, which I can't really go to right now. Well, I guess I could, but we're kind of not because of coronavirus. I have a setup just like this where I have all these old computers behind me, and one of them signed by Steve Wozniak, which is always a great conversation piece when someone comes in my office. I'm like, founder of Apple Computer signed one of these.
Awesome.
But we're wrapping up here, and I know we're kind of getting a little off topic, but I just have two more quick questions for you. I know we're getting out of time. So you're still early in your career, but you've done a ton of stuff. So what do you think are the most significant things you've done so far, and what is your favorite thing you've done so far?
Oh man, that's a tough question. I mean,
I know it's a cheesy question.
I know it's just like I feel like most of the things I've done are all pretty exciting. I would say like a moment that's always going to really kind of stick with me was this EDM artist that I've probably been working with for like 5 or 6 years. Last Labor Day, she was came to New York to perform at Electric Zoo, which is one of these big festivals on Labor Day. She was on the main stage performing live with like one of these big DJs, and me and my wife went out to see her and her husband, and we were backstage. We met him at the hotel, and just seeing her in front of like 30,000-50,000 screaming people, like it's just like wow. You know what I mean? It's just one of these things that it's just like, this is someone that like I've been helping and kind of in their corner and watching them kind of grow and evolve, and hearing about like the band that she was performing with like years, like, oh, I remember doing that deal for them. Because a lot of these deals happen, months, if not longer, before the actual song is released. So it's like, yeah, like I remember doing a deal for that song. And now it's like, you're performing live at EZoo in between like, Benny Benassi and Zed. And it's like, these are people that, from the music world are like, legendary. And to kind of see people that you're working with, like sharing the same green room and like, like walking past Shaq, DJ Diesel and Afrojack and like, just like, yeah, like I'm just kind of part of this. I think, it's something that was really memorable.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That, more recently, I actually have a book coming out at the end of February that looks at kind of, the business and some legal aspects of esports and professional gaming. So, kind of getting that email from the publisher, like, hey, here's a deal. We want to like, make your book into like a book. It was, that was really exciting.
Yeah.
And then seeing like the cover when they send you that image, you're just like, wow, like it's real now.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
So it's like, I haven't really kind of gone public with it. I'm waiting for the Amazon pre-order, link to be live. But, I would say those are two things that really kind of stick out to me.
Well, that's awesome. So final question, what's the future? What's the plan?
I mean, the future is bright. I'm definitely very big on the mobile as well as the college esports side. I think, that there's going to be, that's just like the area is going to keep growing because that's like the sweet spot of the demographic of, the 18 to 35 that, esports encompasses. And, everyone has a mobile phone. And, I just think that there's just so many integrations that people haven't really focused on at all. And that, you're talking about millions of people within this college ecosystem, in the US as well as across the country and, across the continent, across the globe. So I really think that there's just like a huge upside there and hoping to be involved, whether it's, in a teaching capacity or, just trying to continue to advise different programs on how you approach this space and how you develop curriculum and what information might be useful to, students and professionals that are, trying to get into this stuff. And then really just continuing to build, what I'm doing with the law firm and, on the talent development side, because I think that there's just a lot of unique talent. Most of them are really doing a lot of stuff on their own, and all they really need is the right guidance and the right people in their corner to, kind of help mold things, open up new doors, and, I'm hoping to be one of those people.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and I completely agree with you on the mobile side of esports. I think it's way overlooked in the U.S. It's not overseas because they're on
Yeah.
it, but here it is way overlooked. We're focused on mostly PCs. For the big esports games, and I really, League of Legends is releasing their version of League.
Yeah, Wild Rift.
Yeah,
is
the
gonna
other
be-
league is the other similar League of Legends game I've got on my phone. I'm not really playing mobile. I'm a PC guy, but man, it's coming, and even like with like Among Us being on the mobile device, like I see it. I think you're right on there. I think it's coming, and I think I agree with you that everyone's got a phone. Not
and you're
everyone at the
glued
high
to it
end.
most of the time.
Yeah,
Like,
and not everyone's got a high end PC that can play League of Legends at 120 frames per second. I mean, they just don't, or Overwatch, or whatever it is. But
yeah,
they've got the mobile phone that can play the
connect
game.
the Wi-Fi in most places.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. Well, hey, you know what? This is a cool interview. I learned a lot of really cool stuff. It's really interesting hearing about just the law side of things. It's something that I don't think a lot of esports people coming up into the industry are thinking about. I don't think they think about it until all of a sudden they got this big contract. But man, even just that gamer tag thing, I think is really important. And it's not a super expensive thing to get a trademark for a gamer tag. It could totally be worth it for some of my students that I'm even thinking of.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, if you're going to be, selling merch with your name on
Yeah.
it, or, really trying to do appearances and really kind of, work with brands and try to do, develop, officially licensed products,
Yeah, you
with
need
these, you need it because
Mhm.
it gives you this protectability, and without it, you're really kind of, I guess, the last lesson is you don't want to spend your time and money building a brand or a name that you can't really own and use.
Yeah.
I think that's like the biggest thing, and why, proper protection and monitoring and, doing searches to determine the availability of it is,
Mhm.
really essential. Because that's the worst thing is if you spend all this time, this money, you become huge and you're about to, sign a big deal. And then out of nowhere, you get one of these nice letters like, well, actually, we own the rights to the name and you have
Yeah.
to cease and desist, or, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. And it just like really is a huge issue if you have to rebrand and change your name, and, all your
Yeah.
social media is verified and everyone knows you as one thing. And it's, could cost you millions of dollars depending on, how it plays out.
Mhm. Yeah, no, it's awesome. I learned a lot. It was really cool. It was great. I had fun talking to you today.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me. And, to listeners out there, check me out on Twitter, Justin J ESQ. My DMs are open. So feel free if you have any questions or any more information. I'm always, down to impart wisdom whenever I can.
Awesome. Thank you, Justin.